I'd like to call to order this Tuesday, February 7th meeting of the East Ascension Drainage District. And I thank everyone who is here. Appreciate you being here tonight, staff and our guest. Thank you for being with us. At this time, I'll do the roll call. We have Councilman Travis Turner, Councilman Ogeron, Councilman Robert, or Commissioner Robert, and Commissioner Dempsey Lambert absent this evening. Commissioner Lambert's at work. Councilman Robert I did not hear from. Councilman Ogeron is ill, and I did not hear from Councilman Turner, so Commissioner Turner. Everyone else, Madam Secretary, is present. Mr. Cagnolati, would you please lead us in the prayer and the invocation and the pledge of allegiance?
Heavenly Father, we ask your blessings on this gathering as we conduct the business of Ascension Parish's citizens regarding flood protection. Keep us tuned in to what we need to do, not necessarily what we want to do. We ask your blessings on the council members serving on this board, the administration, and all the parish employees who work in drainage. May they continue to serve you as we should. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Chair would entertain a motion to accept the minutes after saying, if you have a comment that you want to make, I zipped by that one. If you have a comment that you want to make, please come up and see the secretary. There's red and green cards there. If you'd like to comment in the negative or the affirmative on any item on this agenda, you're welcome to do that. You'll have 3 minutes at the appropriate time to speak. If no one is here for that, then we will move on to a motion for the acceptance of the minutes. I have a motion by Commissioner, excuse me?
A second.
Okay, thank you. I have a motion by Commissioner Mason and a second by Commissioner Melanson to accept the minutes. Are there any questions? Any objections? Hearing none, the minutes are accepted. Mr. Chairman, I do not have any comments at this time. Well, I take that back. I'm going to have a comment. We have some discussion going on momentarily this evening, later, about the incident that happened at Marvin Bro. I want to thank Bill ahead of time for spending days and nights preparing this report and for his and your cooperation. Thank you so much. Appreciate you both. All right. Let's see. Any other announcements, Mr. President? Do you have anything?
Not at this moment, Chair.
Thank you. I will mention this morning that this morning I went to the Ascension Amite River Basin Commission meeting. Our president is now a member of that important body. It was a pleasure to be there. It was long, and it started off in a quite interesting way, so I encourage any members of the public who would like to watch that to do so. I think you'll find it interesting and entertaining. Thank you, Mr. President, for serving in that capacity. I will tell you that I thought you comported yourself well today, represented Ascension Parish very well, and we appreciate that very
Thank you,
much.
Madam Chair.
All right. Item number 6, general business. A, approval of proposals for culvert sizing and consulting services by Hartman Engineering, not to exceed $150,000. Mr. Monsu, have a motion by Mr.
Second.
Who made that motion, please? Mr. Mason, and a second by Mr. Melanson. Are there any questions of Mr. Monsu? Mr. Cagnolati.
Hey, hi Jared, how are you?
How you doing?
Is this going to be parish-wide on the east side?
East
Or
side only.
It's going to be done in phases, or?
It's just whatever comes up. It's the day-to-day, I'll give you a real brief update. Designing culverts, attending the ERA meetings with East Ascension Drainage. But as of today, we've designed / sized 80 plus culverts, and that can be anywhere from regular circular pipes, box culverts, arch pipe, bulkheads. We're currently on the third bulkhead review. Two may necessitate design plans and specifications. The third one was just a residential review. The other two are a little bit more detailed involved. Reviewing commercial and residential developments. Site visits, sporadic. We have a rain event, a resident calls, the parish will call me and I'll go assist them, whatever they need. Sometimes they use me as a shield, but that's okay. Rain gauges, we just finished our round of permitting through DOTD, which involved detailed civil and structural drawings, and I was the PE that stamped those plans and those permits.
The reason I ask is Lake Park subdivision, Ron. I know we had a survey done of the drainage of that, and a lot of the incidents that they said were problems were drainage culverts. And I think you said we were going to work toward the end of getting those replaced. I hope this is part of that.
Yeah, I could get those plans over to Jared, let him review them, and then also get with operations. I know that as they've been coming up, the guys in operations have replaced a few here and there in line with those plans and set them those grades, but I do need to get that set of plans over to Jared to review.
Good. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So we have a motion and a second. Are there any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jared. Item B, Ascension Regional Detention Discussion. Mr. Quitmo.
Thank you, Chair. So, me and Board Member Malassaw had several conversations since we took office about the field ordinance. And we were looking at opportunities to help solve the issue with smaller lots having to build these very, very small detention ponds. Some lots were even unable to do so, therefore were taken out of commerce. And so we worked on how we could adjust the field ordinance. And if y'all recall, by that same time is when, it was about the same time, Mr. Malassaw, if you can correct me, about the chain wall addition. I think we were having those discussions when we passed that. But we were never able to do so because we didn't have regional projects in place at the time to pay into for mitigation of smaller lots. And so we were never able to complete that task or come up with a viable solution through the planning department of doing that. Now that we have the 30 projects throughout the parish and almost every drainage district, therefore gives us the opportunity to revisit this process and start to hopefully develop a path for these smaller lots to mitigate so that they don't have to build these mosquito small ponds that really are not affecting drainage to any sort or substantial impactful way, and invest into a regional solution that helps the entire area. So I think that at this time, this is a great opportunity to have HNTB come aboard with this, is my suggestion. They did hire Russ Poppy, which there's John in the back, from Harris County, who has a lot of experience in what they did with detention and retention as far as their program. So with that expertise and with them on contract provides us a great opportunity to revisit this topic and hopefully find some solutions so that some of these smaller tracts are not taken out of commerce and actually are able to provide some meaningful impact in regional detention at the same time. And Mr. Malassaw, if you want to add to that in any kind of, since you're part of that conversation.
Yeah. And I would also like to add, so via our CARES Act money that we received last year, we do have $2 million earmarked out of that $24 million total that for regional detention and or and the recreation asset as well. That's something that we were really enlightened to in our Harris County trip, well, it's 2 years ago now, hard to believe it's been 2 years. But it's something that we can really kind of hit two birds with one stone. And this topic is a big deal, to me, because I am, if not the lowest, one of the lowest lying areas in the district. It's really tough on, people who even have a half-acre land at some point to do. Once you go over the 76 yards of field that is allowed via the field ordinance, per our building code, even if you put your house on pier and beam, you still have to have some type of pad underneath that house for the water runoff to where you're not holding water. And sometimes there's just not enough land in a half-acre lot, to make that work. So this is, something I'd really like to see us get going. I know we've had the conversation several times with Mr. Monzon and H&TB, and so we do have $2 million earmarked via the CARES Act. It would be fantastic if we could find the first location to start this project to where we can implement some recreation in that, but no, it's been a few years now, so I would like to dive as deep into this as we can, and even go as far as to between H&TB and administration, let's start identifying some properties next to our major waterways. This, large tracts of land that are not developed, and maybe that's something we can start investing in. So I'll just throw them comments out there, and it's very difficult, to hear constituents talk about, if they're trying to build their family or forever home on a, little half-acre piece of land, and it's almost impossible. And if you look around the Gulf Coast all the way into Central Texas, regional detention is their solution. Not many people are, going at it the way we are. Mosquito pond next to mosquito pond. So I would like to, start really pushing this initiative, and if there's one thing we learned from Harris County, I believe back in '98 or '99, they made an initial, I think it was $1.8 million investment. They bought a large tract of land, and as they sold the credits out of there, however many cubic yards of field they had and whatnot, that is how much it cost the homeowner to buy into that credit bank. So they got that $1.8 million back. They went and bought another large tract, and then, fast forward to 2021 when we were there, I think they, correct me if I'm wrong, 102 or 105 regional detention ponds across Harris County. So having that initial investment is the tough part, and I think we kind of had that taken care of via the CARES Act. So this is something that I'd really like to look into and get behind. So just throw that out there. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments, gentlemen? Mr. Mason?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have to agree with Councilman Walsall. Whenever we went to Houston, when we went to Houston, it was quite impressive what they had done with those parks, and now they bought those subdivisions and turning them into parks and detention areas. So I'm completely on board with this. I think that this is something that we could absolutely do. I remember Ron and I having a conversation after we left. We're just like, trying to picture land in Ascension Parish so we could do this with. I think this is something that's well overdue. And like the president said, since we have H&TB already on contract and they have the gentleman from Harris County, I think it's a natural fit. So I'm all on board for this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, gentlemen? Okay, Mr. President, I think that everyone concurs pretty much. We don't have an item here to vote on tonight, but we would certainly encourage you and the folks at H&TB to move forward and then come back to this Drainage Commission with a full presentation on how we might accomplish what we have just discussed. I will mention that in the Amite River Drainage Commission meeting today, in listening to the Corps, certainly one of the things that they are shifting to across the country and desire to shift to here in our area is more about regulation of how houses are built and the raising of those houses than about big projects that are quite costly and don't always solve the problem. So I think that we're going to need to be better informed about that as well. We do have a good fill ordinance. I don't want to see us do anything that undermines that, but I do want us to address this issue if at all possible, and to couple that with recreation. I think that's outstanding.
Yes. Yeah, the criteria would be on the size of the lot, obviously. Larger tracts will need to mitigate on site, obviously. So it is, what is that threshold? When we talk about that, and that's something we have to get with planning, discuss that, see where this problem has arisen on a consistent basis, and then we'll try to lay out a task to do this. It does provide us an opportunity, especially with the funding of the 30 projects, to isolate those for which this program would fit, and we can have that initial seed money, and then the mitigation credits would pay back into the system, therefore giving us, or like reimbursing us in a sense, because we have budgeted money for these 30 projects with match money and things like that. So it just provides the mechanism to put this together. So what we'll do is we'll start putting that proposal together with the planning department, what it's going to look like, and bring that back to either for a discussion or for an action item, whatever y'all see fit.
Thank you, sir. Item 7A. Oh, excuse me. Oh, I'm sorry, Dal, I didn't see you.
It's
Mr.
okay.
Wagasback.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, so I'm glad you said that, Clint. I think before we vote on this and vote the funds, we need kind of a laid out plan of, stage gate, what are we doing when, what kind of details we get when, just a plan of action so we can understand what the steps are to doing this.
Yeah,
So-
it's going to be very complicated. So what you're going to have to do is run it from, you're going to have to come up with a proposal, and I think that's what the task order is going to be, is to come up with the plan, and then us work the plan, because the cause and effect is what we have to look at specifically, and how it's impacted. We have to run it all the way through into reality. And it was great with the field ordinance, but it has caused this issue, and we don't want to do that same thing. The intent was a great intent, but there's these circumstances that happen because of it that now we're trying to have a positive solution that has drainage benefit, but also correcting that impact on smaller lots that occurred when we approved the field ordinance. So we have an opportunity to get a double win here, as Mr. Malonzo stated.
Thank you. All right, anybody else? All right, moving along to item 7, Jade Robb and the monthly drainage report.
Good to see y'all again. We'll bring y'all a pretty quick presentation, because I know we want to get on with some of the pumping station stuff. So I want to remind y'all, we just went through a little upgrade on our computer system, so we are adjusting some of our reports and working with Mr. Martinez on that at this time. So you'll see a little change on the layouts over the next couple, just trying to find the best information to give to y'all without keeping y'all here all night. So right now, work order status, throughout last year, we've had 1,590 work orders since last April, 909 completed, 57%, so we're up from 52 to 53 average to 57, so proud of my guys for bringing that up, especially early in the year, especially the bad weather we've had and some of the challenges we face with wet conditions. But this will give you an idea, kind of the work order status breakdown. This is throughout the year, through each department, sub-department within drainage, minor east drainage, just under 1,100 work orders. EAD board is kind of a generic. It was designed for any request that you guys put in. Right now, we're trying to get it sorted out to where they actually get signed correctly. So these aren't all assigned out right now. But this was something so we could keep track of the work that was requested by y'all. Hopefully we'll get it narrowed down. Culvert maintenance, 68. Major drainage, 61. Remind you on a yearly basis, 61 is a small number, but these are very large projects. These projects can last months, on end, 3 to 6 months or longer. Waterways, 53. Right-of-ways, 41. Right-of-ways is something we just added. We wanted to document any work our right-of-ways agents were doing, along with the legal work that was being done. So this is just some of our development within our work order system. We try to narrow it down by activities, and you look out throughout the years, what's mostly getting tasked through our drainage department, where you see dig roadside ditches. It's a very heavy burden on the parish to keep those ditches dug. Everything from removing culverts to culvert sizing, tree removal, rip wrapping. This is how we task out our work monthly. So in the future here, I'll give you more of a monthly report, but I really wanted you to see what these guys face on a yearly, what we're seeing the most demand for at the beginning of a year, what we look forward to when the sun shines. So this is a monthly report. It shows us our trend from 2022, brings us into 23. You can see we received 169 requests in the month of January, and we completed 90 requests, which is where we've been trending anywhere from that, 90 to 120 work orders a month. So we're pretty close to on point with what we have been trending. Go into our major drainage projects that were complete. We put barrels in on Cow Road, Ronald Power Box culverts, dressed those up. Goudine Bridge at Babin Road, cleaned it up. Finished shredding Highway 936 to Split Log Road. Completed the Upper Goudine past Calco Road, and we're continuing on those Goudine laterals at the time. In progress is Upper Goudine laterals. Tier 3 finished from Ferdinand Road to Alex Kling, ongoing to Old Mill at this time. And shredding from 936 to Heath Bayou. I wanted to conclude this night's report and kind of touch on something we never touch on, and it goes back to our pumping stations. So I want to ask that y'all limit y'all's questions when it comes to Marvin Bro, because I'd like to do that on the backside of Mr. Bills if we have any. But we want to kind of give an operational standpoint of where we're at, because we don't ever report on that. And I think it's very important that y'all know where we're at based on some of the questions that may be raised. So I brought a simple spreadsheet here of just a task that was tasked in the month of January from this incident, kind of bringing us home to make us look further into this. So this time we have 23 task orders throughout our 3 stations, more heavily in Marvin Bro because that's where we're focused. But let's start with Sorrento, just give you a little update on what's going on there. At the moment, we're tasked to do mechanical evaluations on all 3 engines. They have been currently serviced and monitored by our staff, all within the last 2 weeks. Reason we do mechanical evaluations first is because we got a couple reports saying we need to look at some vibration issues on one. We certainly don't want to realign pumps and work on vibration issues if we have a mechanical motor issue. So we start there, do our annual checks, and then we'll move into our vibration and our realignment procedures. Other than that, we're on full SCADA. At that station, we're working on some of the VT SCADA reports right now with Prime. That is in the process, but SCADA's working out very well for us at the moment. The pump is automatic. We do man it at this time to verify until we're confident that we don't have any issues at that station. That's per parish. President Quint Bonds likes, and I don't blame him. So that's where we're at with Sorrento right now. And also looking at the O&M manuals that were brought to us in October for that station. Henderson Bayou, we've had vibration testing done there. We have many checks done through a Dura Group and Prime. Delcon has come in and did alignment checks. We have a couple tasks there, a couple little heaters, some fuel level sensors, just tuning those guys up. And I think there's one here for some resilient material in one of the couplings. So that was some of the things they looked at and found on their assessment that we needed to look at. And right now we're working with IT on cameras internal of that station. And I'll mention Sorrento has internal cameras and exterior. Henderson Bayou has exterior, does not have interior, and based on what we've learned over the last month, we want to add interiors to all our stations. So that is in the works through our IT department. And we move on to Marvin Bro, give you more of an operational standard and what we're doing to enhance it and kind of catch up while the contractors are doing their work. We've worked on the fire alarm system. We've had it fully inspected, certified. That is done in place at the moment. Our alarm has been upgraded, is actually active at this moment. It is a temporary till we do the final measures, which we'll go into more of SCADA, things like that, but that's on the back end. But we do have an actual working alarm at this time. We did some work to the engines on Rake 7 that has been completed by Dura Group. Dale Connor has assessed our complete air system, and they're currently working on just some small air issues, but nothing to the extent of what actually caused our issue. But things that we would like to see better and upgrades to the system and verifying that we're not going to have this issue anymore. All of our engines throughout all 3 of our stations, all fluid samples have been taken, sent off, verified. Everything came back good. 2 engines are close to oil changes, so that's where we're at with our fluids. But we did certify that every lubricated point at these stations are in good shape. So that has been completed. Let's see, conduit for cameras is complete at the Marvin Bro station. That's some of the exterior cameras that President Quintma wanted to add. That was completed as of this morning. And the last thing I think is one of the biggest, which is in our operations, and this is where I think we're going to really bring our staff up, is Mr. Bill will talk about this a little later. I gave him some examples. We implemented 3 sheets. We implemented a pump and event form. So these guys are tasked to go to each engine every hour. They have parameters on these forms. So if the temperature is supposed to be X, Y, or Z, it's got X, Y, Z on it. And if it's not X, Y, or Z, they're going to know that they need to contact that mechanic, but they're also going to record it. So we're going to have that data every hour until we do implement something such as SCADA. We implemented a facilities check sheet that's going to not let us get by and not know that air alarm's not active, that fire system works. And this is going to be done every week. It is a weekly facility checklist. And then we also have a non-pumping event. So everybody says, well, we're not pumping. We don't have to check engines. Well, sure we do. We want to make sure that these engines are ready to pump. So you're going to check them a little differently. But every day those guys come in, they're going to check these engines and document that they're ready. So one of the things is changing that operation is using those people correctly and using that information to get to the proper people so we don't fall behind on anything. So that's some of the things we've been working really hard with, along with getting that station together and getting these things back up and promoting, just moving forward, the future. All we can do is move forward. It's what we can do. So, but I want to thank y'all because I've worked with these contractors. These guys have been great. We was down for literally 4 hours. Brought 4 pumps back up. We're now on 5 pumps at Marvin Bro. I brought in a Dura Group, Mr. Billy Blackwell and Mr. Joe Becker. And I brought in Dale Con tonight. These guys are great. And I want to thank y'all for bringing them on because I'm telling you guys, we wouldn't be pumping water right now without them. So thank y'all for that. And I think Mr. Bill's report at the end is going to really show you where we need to move. And he's going to have some good points, and we're going to take takeaways from it. And hopefully these operational reports, we're going to give them monthly and keep y'all up to date where we're at until, we're at satisfaction. Okay?
Thank you, Jay. That would be my request, is that the reports on the pumping station maintenance be made a part of our regular meeting so that we understand where we are. Mr. President.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to mention, we are kind of new to this SCADA. In Jay's report, he was kind. I do not feel comfortable with Sorrento SCADA at this moment. There are some bugs we have to work out. There's some PLC issues and some things that are not up to what I believe needs to happen. We're working with Prime to sort those things out. But SCADA is a very tricky thing. And we're in manual because I'm not satisfied in going auto. We've had some issues here or there. And so until I feel comfortable and the system is working with me being 100% comfortable, including the staff being 100% comfortable. It's going to be a while before we build all these stations and they're completely run on SCADA and all of this data is to point and we can track reports and get all these things. A lot of these other parishes have been doing this for years and their SCADA systems are well developed, like many of the industry here. We are just starting this process. Sorrento is the first pilot project into the SCADA realm, and it is not at a point on which I'm satisfied. I need to state that because as we continue to look at and build the other stations at SCADA, I believe that we got to get Sorrento correct first, and we are not there, in my opinion. And so we're going to continue to work with Prime to ensure that that's the case. But there are some issues, and so I don't want the illusion that, oh, we'll just throw SCADA in these pumping stations and everything will be solved, and then that's just not, it's not that simple. It's very complicated, and Sorrento is not where it needs to be today. And so I don't want to expand this SCADA system until we at least get that correct and that right, so that we know that we know where we're heading, we know what the expectations are, we know how to feel comfortable. And so as we continue to develop our SCADA program, just want y'all to be aware that we'll have to keep you up to date on the progress of those things. Even our rain gauges is not complete. I don't feel comfortable that that's where it needs to be. And so we're going to continue to work on that, and we'll look at some different options in the future on how to properly develop that system, because it is very complicated, it is very tricky, and it's a lot of wireless communications and just the whole setups, and then coming back to the terminals and having IT as well as Brian Martinez involved, and all these discussions back and forth, and a lot of questions about PLCs and accesses to those information and networks. We're sorting all that out. We're just in our infancy. We're just starting this program, so I don't want to go with the concept that, oh, we'll just throw SCADA in and that'll be the solution. Because if you don't do it right, then we're not getting the necessary information, it's not working properly, and then we made a bad investment. And I just don't want to do that. So I just want to be cautious about the aggressive nature of SCADA until we all feel comfortable with where we're headed and the build-out is properly done. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. President, I appreciate your candor. It is a challenging thing to put into a pumping station. I realize that. I think that one of the reasons it was never done was because of that challenge. And so I think that's one of the things that we have to get brave, and we certainly have the resources, and we need to take the step. So I thank you very much for your candor about how complicated it is, and we understand that. Yeah. I sincerely believe it was not done years ago because it was complicated.
It's complicated.
And so, at this, I hope that under our leadership this year, we can get this begun to be implemented, and then over the next few years, see it all of them come online.
And one of the other things, too, to kind of back up Clint here, we do have a DIR group tasked right now. They are currently working on what type of equipment it takes to start at that obviously the Marvin Bros station, the equipment, the sensors, the PLCs, all those necessary items. And those guys are, I'm sure at the stage they're reviewing what they've put together right now, but Mr. Billy has been in contact with me. And when they get even their close preliminaries, they're going to bring our SCADA group in, meet with the entire group together, and then say, hey, this is the capabilities. At the end of the day, what do y'all want out of these capabilities? So then at that point, then we'll move forward with it, and I'll let Clint move that forward. But I just wanted y'all to know that they are at the moment working on the beginning stages of that package. We are not sparing any time to at least investigate this and go that direction if possible.
Thank you. Any questions, gentlemen? None at this time.
Thank y'all.
Thank you, sir. 7B, the monthly vegetation report. Hi. Johan, good to have you with us this evening. Thank
Good
you.
to be here. Good afternoon, everybody. Councilman, Parish President. So this is a recap over 23, January 23. Let me get my slide. There we go. I knew I was missing something. All right. So we actually have a lot of new things happening in vegetation. To give you a quick overview of what's going on. So we've taken our typical 4 quadrants that has been a long-standing breakdown, and we've further broken down those 4 into, currently we're at 63 mowing districts, and we used our voting precincts as a model because those are either dissected by a major road or one of our major water arteries. And so what we're going to be doing, our parish road mowing and spraying and our off-road mowing and spraying are going to be broken down into each one of these districts, and we'll have a work order that is created by task for each district to actually give us creating repeating cycles of service. All incoming work orders that we're going to receive from the call center, whichever mowing district they're physically in, are going to get tasked and linked to the next cycle coming up. And so when our supervisors are moving throughout the parish on whatever task that they're doing, that work order for that area is already going to have all the complaints on that district work order, just so they can make sure that they attend to everything in that district. So this is just going to allow our department to focus on all of our maintenance rotation through the parish and make sure we provide equal level of service to everybody. So we've been in this mode since about October, November. So what have we done with this so far? So I'm sure as most of y'all realize, we've been having pretty consistent heavy rain since November. That's when we had to kill our continuous off-road mowing. So the mowing district work orders where we stopped at that time were put on hold. They're still on hold, and we know exactly where we're going to go back as soon as Mother Nature cooperates. So since November, since we were no longer able to cut off road, we started going through our parish roads and following by herbicide treatment. At the time that I wrote this report about a week ago, we were at 92% completion of cutting all of our parish roads and following up at 72% of following behind and spraying. I do expect that we will go into our 2023 growing season at full completion of mowing and spraying on all of our parish roads. We've also been working with our GIS department and are currently in the trial stages of building data to be able to show progress that we're making on a website for the parish administration, the public to view our progress. That's going to be showing our parish road mowing, our parish road spraying, our off-road cutting, our off-road spraying, where we're at on our state highways, and even a heat map on where our litter crews are working. So I hope to be able to show y'all that in the upcoming month or two once I get enough data to actually make it worth showing to y'all and bringing live. We're seeing a lot of good things what we're doing with this, because now our guys are actually able to physically see in the work order system that what we've been doing with Brian and our GIS department even populates into our work order system. So when they're looking at our work order system, if they turn on the right layer, they'll even see these maps populate through everything. So we've got really good stuff going on. At the end of January for our state highways, we've completed cutting 42, 61, 933, and 427. Some work order metric numbers. Just for January, we received 27 new requests. As you can see, as always, hand cleaning servitude is still in the lead by far. Of all the queue that we've had bleeding over from last year, we managed to complete 97. You can see our hand cleaning and servitude still leading. Our overall work order status, I believe we had about 1,600 that came in last year. Currently, we're at about 72% completion. Right now, we have, since I think I last showed you this, our on hold status has actually increased That's because I've been going through our queue system, and any work orders that are waiting to be done have now been put on hold and matched with their current mowing district coming up. So that actually will be some information for our call center to give the residents when they call on the check that it's been addressed, assigned, and it's on hold for the next rotation. Our own internal work orders that we do, just being about in the parish, finding work that needs to be done that we see ourselves. Our tree crew has been quite busy getting trees. We've also had our crews actually putting some hand labor in our parish road ditches, cleaning up culverts and ditches from limbs and trash and other debris. An update for our Lifehouse contract. We're at about $127,000 remaining, and I believe for next month's agenda we'll be petitioning for an additional for the contract amount. Everything has been going really good. We're able to give our residents a very high level of service, and these guys are definitely the scalpel of our department. Anyone have any questions or comments?
At what stage of the year are we at that figure?
I'm sorry?
At what stage of the year are we financially with that figure for Lifehouse? I mean, is this over a 12-month period? This is what they've...
The total is, since the contract has started, I believe it was started right before I got here, so that was around mid-2021, into 2021.
So if you could provide me at some point with what stage of the year, if we're at, the first quarter of the year and we have spent this much on them, how much of this contract, how long is it going to last? I mean, are we going to need to add more to their contract? What's the status? Mr. President.
Yeah. I would like to go ahead and start from inception of the program and give you all that data, all contract amounts, all dates approved, all the way up till today, so that next month you'll have that information of a complete picture from when this program started. And dollars spent, including the number of personnel and whatever information that we can include into that packet.
We appreciate that. Thank you so much. What I'm trying to get at is, are we estimating correctly what the amount of this contract is going to need to be? And so if you could provide us with that information, we'd be appreciative.
One comment to that, I think that Johan and I have been in discussions about this, and I'm glad he brought it up to you guys tonight. Last year is pretty much the metric, a full year's service, so it'd be good to look at that, and we'll be able to gauge that pretty accurately. So we feel like the amount that's left on the contract is going to get us to the start of the spring rotation, but we'll definitely need an amendment to make it through the season. We'll be coming back to you for that.
Thank you. And we'd also, I think, would find ourselves interested in how this is saving us money, or if it's costing us more. So we entered into these contracts under the premise that it would be cost savings, and we need to understand that it is indeed, or if it's not, we need to understand why not. Thank you. Mr. Wagasback.
Yeah, so that was part of my question, what you said, just are we saving money versus what we used to do. My other question would be, I know we talked about using a drone to spray. I know these guys have reached some areas that maybe were neglected for a couple years, or we couldn't reach because of a lot of rain. So are these areas that we can put on, just like you do grass cutting, is this going to be some off-road stuff where we can put it on a schedule for spraying?
Right.
We don't have to keep
what
going
we've been
back
using
in.
the drone for lately, just last week, we were spraying part of the Helboline lateral down north of, I think that's between Geismar and Darrow. And one of my supervisors came and said, it's been so wet, can we get the drone to go in there and fly? And so they're actually been spraying parts of that they know they won't be able to get in there for quite a while. And my supervisors are actually being proactive and actually letting me know of where we can actually send it. So it's actually been very productive, and it's been used more or less of fixing our trouble areas that we can get them back under control very soon. It is going to be part of our normal production, routine maintenance.
Yeah, that's just what I'm asking. Is that, is this something where as as we get these trouble areas that are hard to get to in control, do we control them with spray? And what's the cost of that versus, sending this labor back in to weed eat? I'm assuming that's.
Right, because some of the places we send them would not have even sent hand crews.
Right.
Because they're very, we did spray the pumping station around Astroland. I wouldn't have sent hand crews down there to try to spray when it took, 30 minutes for a drone to go and fly and get it totally under control. So.
All right, thank you.
It's definitely been a very productive asset.
My apologies, Mr. Lawler, I skipped you.
It's okay. No, I think I hit it after Councilman White is back. But when we do that report next month, I just want to play. It's not just about money savings. If y'all can also, and kind of like you do every month, show how much work we're getting done for that. Because if we're spending more, but we're still getting more work done, we're providing more work for our citizens. That's worthwhile.
Yeah,
I don't want to lose that aspect of it, not just financial.
The task code, hand cleaning and servitude, that is all our Lifehouse guys.
Yeah, but I want to make sure we can compare that to what we were doing before without them to know, they're costing money, about $1 billion a year, somewhere around that. But if we're getting a commensurate amount of work, of services from them where it's worthwhile to us, we need to know that also. I mean,
Sure.
If we're saving money, it doesn't do any good to save money but not provide services to our citizens. So we want to make sure we have that balance. So I think y'all kind of do that, but I want to see it tied in together at this next meeting so we don't just get overwhelmed with we're saving or losing money.
Yeah. Good point, Aaron. I appreciate that. Anything else, sir?
No, ma'am, that's it. I was just fielding any questions anybody had.
That's it. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Item C, HNTB's ADAPT Program Grant Application Monthly Update. Mr. Monzon. Good to see you, sir.
Good evening. How are y'all today?
We are well, sir.
All right, just to give you an update on some of the activities that we've been working on. I'm gonna turn it on. That would help. Okay, so give you a little update last month on some of the grants that we've been working on. We've submitted 3 HMGP grants: the Savoy Arena Wet Retrofit, the La Cheniere Lateral Detention, and the Black Bayou Detention Project. We submitted 2 brick applications: the Burt Allen Ditch Improvement and Detention, and the Marty Burat Lateral. We'll continue to monitor 2023 Notice of Funding Opportunities for grants. And we have begun to respond to some requests for information on the Marty Burat and Marvin Brew grants. Some of the ones that have NFOs this year: BRIC, HMGP, FEMA, and then DOTD through the statewide flood control application. Pre-applications are due in May, so we're going to meet with the parish officials and pick out some that will probably be best suited for statewide flood control. DOTD has informed me that they typically allot about $20 million for statewide flood control. Last year, they didn't spend all of their money, so they're going to have some extra this year for the statewide flood control. The Marvin Brook Pump Station Levee Expansion Kickoff Meeting, we're going to meet with the Hartman team on the 9th of this week to have a kickoff and schedule deadlines and workflows for this particular project. 2 weeks ago, I provided FEMA with an updated project schedule. We've also provided some engineering support tasks. We prepared a cost estimate for the Butch Gore Park renovation, cost estimates for the Lamar Dixon Watershed, Stevens Park drainage detention, and we've also provided the assistance with the parish for some modeling efforts. And all of these here are, all these parks, this is just in a planning phase, trying to get the parish an idea as to what it might cost to do construction activities, and then decide if you can go after grants and maybe perform some additional analysis. So that's where we are with that. And that's it. That's all the updates I have, unless anyone has any additional questions.
Questions, gentlemen? None at this time, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item 7D, the Marvin Brew Pump Station Incident Update. Mr. Dawson?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Commissioners. So tonight, I wanted to present to you my findings on this incident that we had at Marvin Brew on December the 30th. I would like to start this, though, tonight with a video. This is, if you look at your screens, this is looking down the road from 6 and 7 to 1 at the far end, 1 and 2 at the far end, and obviously this is on the discharge side of the pumps. And so I wanted you guys to, I don't know if you had an opportunity to look at this. These are the cameras that are fixed mounted at Marvin Bro. There are 9 cameras that look mostly at the outside in Marvin Bro. I say mostly, all of these do look on the outside. So when we look at this, what we see is there should have been about 6 pumps running at this time. So we had 1 through 5, and then 7 would make the 6 pumps. They were preparing for a small event to start with, and then it turned into a larger event when a rainstorm hit up in North Ascension. So then they moved from a 3-pump operation to a 6-pump operation. But what I'd like to note here is that, you know, if you look down at 1 and 2, so we're going to switch the clips right now, I guess, Jarius. But if you look down at 1 and 2, it looks like smoke, but now this is smoke. That was a smear on the lens. So I wanted you to see the magnitude of this, and I wanted you guys to think about it. This is 11:54 a.m. On December the 30th. Here's the thing that was compelling to me, is at this point in time, we have 3, probably 4 people from Ascension Parish in there fighting that fire with water buckets and handheld extinguishers. And they went in there, you know, strictly voluntarily, and they put, for all intents and purposes, they had most of the fire out by the time the volunteer firefighters came from Sorrento, Sanamo, and 5th Ward. But as you look at this, and as it gets closer to 12, you can see in the lower left-hand corner the actual time. Then we get closer to the fire department arriving. But again, was compelling to me is that the dedication that these people had that went in there and were willing to put this fire out, to put these fires out, because there were several on the couplings across the station, and to do that, you know, with small amounts of equipment, let's call it that. So now you can see the smoke pouring out. I think that's more like 5 or 4, Ron. Is that where you see the big smoke coming out? But it was a serious event. Could have been a lot more serious. Could have been a problem for actually the people that were in there. But they willingly went in there, and was strictly because they like what they do, and they like Ascension Parish, and they're willing to do this. So we had people that went in there and fought that had, I think one of them had about 15 or 17 years work experience at Ascension Parish. One of them had 4 months work experience at Ascension Parish, but they all had this same dedication. And I could tell that when I interviewed them all, that, you know, they had this desire to do what was the best thing for Ascension Parish. And they were out there, and again, let's remember this. This is December 30th, the day before New Year's. This is a Friday, so it was a holiday. And none of them had an issue with that when Jade and Ron, mostly Jade, when they decided they needed to pump, and they called these guys to show up out there. Nobody said, oh, you know, that's the day before New Year's, or, you know, this is supposed to be a holiday. They said, what time and where do I need to be? So this, again, December 30th, a holiday for the employees. And now, if we look at this, you can see the pumps are starting to shut down, and the fire is starting to diminish some. But I wanted you guys to just, you know, and put this in context as we read what happened on December 30th and what people did in order to get the station back up and running on that same day. Some of these people are sitting in here, back here with a Dura. So, you know, we want to know that, you know, I want you to have that context. I put this in here because, you know, obviously you guys know me. I've been involved in the volunteer fire department for about 15 years. This is an example. Every person, Mr. James LeBlanc is here tonight. Every person that responded to that was a volunteer. It was not a single paid person that came and responded to this fire. James can give you some of the statistics on that, but the amount of time between when they were called and they got water on those fires was amazing. And again, it's volunteer people. That's our volunteer people right here that they get paid a few dollars, you know, a few times a year, but they're doing this because they love Ascension Parish. So, you know, again, it's if you will, paid political announcement for our employees and for people that work within the parish. Again, you know, this is you know, volunteer firemen. They're about ready to roll up at this point in time, but we had Ron responded to this. Jade responded to it himself. So we had a lot of people that were not on the clock, if you will, that responded here. So again, and I'll help you kind of coordinate these times, but you can see about 11:40. So, you know, with the bunker gear in one hand and, you know, the helmet in the other, they're headed up there towards the control room. So we'll run out here in a minute, Jarius. Yeah, and we'll talk about that day in particular. Here we go. And listen, I will apologize ahead of time. Don't look for all those flashy slides. You know, I'm kind of embarrassed that I had to come behind Jade and Johan, but you know, I'm kind of plain, I guess. Or I didn't know how to put all those fancy stuff on there. Okay, and yeah, look, that worked. So just a little background, and I know that most of this is repetitive for you guys. At Marvin Bro Pump Station is at the intersection of Severio Canal and New River. There were 5 pumps built first in 1988 through 1991. Pumps 6 and 7 came in 2013 and 2017. These pumps are 1,000 cubic feet per second each. So I didn't do the math on it. Dow maybe could do it, but I think it's about 8 gallons a cubic foot, and then you got 60 minutes. So it's a large number, let's say that. 2,200 horsepower diesel engines that drive each pump. Pump 6 and 7, they have the local displays. They have the, I don't know if I'd call it SCADA, but they have a local display where they can start and stop the pumps from there. But they don't transmit. They don't transmit up into the control room or anything. In my evaluation, here are the points of data that I gathered. I interviewed these people, Marshall Harris, and he was one of the ones that was in that smoky number 5 and number 4. Bill Rue, Chairwoman Casso and myself went with Bill Rue out there and walked around and talked about him. And I mean, we didn't talk about him, we talked with him. And Royce Babin, he was a pump attendant. He's another one. He's actually the one that first noticed the fire. And he started on his own, filling literally a bucket with water and trying to put it on the couplings. Kadarian Herbert, operator, he was another one that was there fighting the fires. James LeBlanc, course, he's here and everybody knows Chief LeBlanc. Ron Savoy and Jade Robin that I interviewed all of them. Documents consulted. Mr. Ray Scully, he's with Delcon or Dura. I think Delcon works for Dura. They were in the back. I guess they're gone now. But you know, this fellow, I didn't interview him, but I had a log of what he did on December 30th and what he did on December 31st. It was impressive. And I can tell you they had 4 pumps back running on December 30th, and when you see, you know, this gentleman's name there, most of the reason is because he was there, and he came, if I'm not mistaken, he came up from Houma when they called him and said they needed help. Jade Robbins' phone, you know, the log of that, and there was some good information on that supplied some timing into who showed up when, who was called when, etc. The Marvin Bro Pump Station Operations and Maintenance Manual, which to your right is the you know, cover picture of that. 374 pages. Should list every piece of equipment there and specifications on that. We'll talk a little bit further about that. Henderson Bayou Pump Station Operations and Maintenance Manual, same deal for this except for Henderson Bayou, and then the Sorrento Pump Station Operation and Maintenance Manual. So I reviewed all those. I reviewed in more detail the Marvin Bro Operations and Maintenance Manual. And then this video that you saw clips from, the video starts at 11:05 a.m. and runs till 2:15 p.m. So based on this analysis, we'll talk about you know, how we got there. There was a rain forecast event that was scheduled for December 30th. Quote, it was a small event that and they called 2 people, Mr. Herbert and Mr. Babin, to come out for that event. They put 2 other people on standby, Marshall and Arthur, they put on standby. So at 6 a.m., like I'm telling you, on December 30th, which was a holiday, Mr. Royce Babin and Mr. Jared Moore. Royce is a pump attendant and Jared Moore is a mechanic. They got to the station, they started to prep to put on 3 pumps. That prep involves warming the oil up, getting the fluids to the right temperature and all that type of thing. Sometimes in that morning, there was a pretty significant rain event in North Ascension. So Jade, in consultation with Ron. Now, Ron was on vacation, but he was in communications with Jade in order to establish what workers they would have and how they would cover these events. So at 9 o'clock, Mr. Dana Gotro called Mr. Kadarian Hebert and Mr. Marshall Harris to come up to Marvin Bro, and mainly they were going to be equipment operators. There were another 3 pumps that were put online, so now you have 6 pumps online, so you got 1 through 5, not 6, but 7. So 6 was, there were trouble with it tripping out. Mr. Harris arrived a little bit after 10. Mr. Herbert arrives at 10:30. They began to clean the decks. That's what, you know, their job as operators of Bobcat, that type of equipment, to keep that deck clean so they can keep the intake clean. At 11:35, so one of the reasons I wanted everybody to look at the video is that as you get closer to 12, then you'll see this fire and the smoke, and that's building up. So at 11:35, Mr. Royce Babin saw the smoke at pump house number 5, so kind of in the middle of what we were looking at, and he went and got a bucket and began pouring water on the coupling guard. Not long after that, I don't have the exact times when they dove in here, but it was some short period after that Mr. Marshall Harris and Mr. Kadarian Herbert began putting the fire out with extinguishers. And they worked on number 2, number 5, number 6, and number 4. Now, I didn't bring a picture of this and probably should have, but you've got the motor, the 2,200 horsepower diesel engine that drives a vertical pump, and there's a right angle gear that gets that down, but there's a coupling in between the engine, the diesel engine, and the pump. And so we're going to go into that a little bit more, but the fire began at this coupling point. So heat was generated from the way that coupling was, and that heat started some oil and grease and debris that was around there on fire. So now we have not just smoke or heat, but you actually have fire, and that's going on at that pump or at the coupling point, but there's a big coupling guard across this, safety device. So, and it's solid. A lot of times you'll see in the plant they'll have this grating type material, but these are solid, and so they had a hard time being able to get into where the coupling was and actually put at this time they're trying to use handheld fire extinguishers, so trying to put that wand in there. So it was difficult to do that, but they figured it out. At 11:49, Mr. Arthur Shakespeare, he arrived, and he called Mr. James LeBlanc. Mr. LeBlanc had tankers from Sorrento and Sanamo. He called them out to come to Marvin Bro. So I'd like at this point, if James doesn't mind, he can come and give us kind of the statistics on when they left Sorrento, when they were called out, when they got on the fire.
So I'll just give you a couple stats. I'll give you a couple stats real quick so Mr. Bill can finish his program. So Sorrento and Sanamo and Fifth Ward volunteer fire departments are the departments that responded to Marvin Bro. I want to remind you again that this is all volunteers, nobody getting paid. So they brought, when we arrived at Marvin Bro on this particular day, we brought 6,550 gallons of water with us. We only used 500 gallons to put the fire out, but we brought 6,550 gallons with us. So from the time that we were dispatched till the time we were flowing water on pump number 5, it was 21 minutes. From the time we left our fire stations to the time we got to Marvin Bro, by the time we were flowing water, it was 21 minutes. So I'm like Mr. Bill, I want to applaud the employees that were there. With the equipment that we had there, that particular day, they were doing everything they could to keep the fire under control until the fire departments got there. So basically, we brought 6,550 gallons of water with us, but we only used 500. And we were able, most of that 500 gallons that we used was basically the cool down mode after the fire was out. So again, I applaud the leadership team and I applaud the employees that were there that particular day. But we had 14 volunteers that responded, and we were very blessed to get it out with no injuries and no injuries to anybody. So I'll answer any questions also if anybody else has any.
Any questions, gentlemen?
Are we going next?
No, just on the fire issue. Thank you, James, and thank you, folks.
Okay, so we pick back up and so within 15 minutes of when the fire department gets there with the tankers, actually 2 tankers, then the fire, for all intents and purposes, was out. The rest of the day they were evaluating the damages and seeing you still have this forecast. So this is PM of 12:30. Still have this forecast that there's big rain event coming. And additionally, you've got the water from the rain event they had in North Ascension that's making its way down there to the pump. So I was just informed that Mr. Scully works for Delcom and not Odura, correct? Sorry about that. But by 8:30 p.m. on 12/30/22, there were 3 pumps running. And so, you know, those of you, Ron and Jade, and certainly Clint knows that, but 3 pumps is probably enough to keep the Severio Canal down and to start getting rid of that water that came into North Ascension. So, you know, it was another thing that was very, that I noticed that was done here, which is that you had a fire, you had could have been very serious damage, and you had the mechanics that came in from Homa. I don't know exactly, you know, all the places. Immediately go to work, evaluate, and let's see what we can do to get as many pumps as we can going, and they did. Now that was a fancy slide for you. But we talked, Jade had gone over this, and there's still, I don't know, you have anything to add, Jade? I mean, I think we did some during the previous presentation. Do you have something else you want to add, or you okay? Fine, okay. I put that in before I realized he was gonna give that during his.
I want to reiterate that on the way to this scene, we made all the appropriate phone calls. The Durr Group, Mr. Mike at Delcom was our first because he's our contractor. And as Mr. Bill said, Mr. Ray was there literally an hour and 45 minutes. And they did drive from Homa. The guys that these guys brought in, their teams, some of their teams come from a job in Galveston.
Mr. J, can you speak into your mic, please, for us? I'm sorry. Thank you.
Apologize. So some of these teams came off of jobs in Galveston's that was almost as important, but were able to shield this away in the event that we were protecting 120,000 plus people. So there was a lot of dedication pulled in on May 30th. I'm sorry, December 30th, which everybody says that, hey, that is the weekend off. That's the one everybody takes off. Never heard one complaint from one of these guys, and their only interest was getting this station. They didn't care what happened. They only care about getting this station up. And then we looked at the results of it. But I think it's very important to know, because there was no selfishness during this event. This was not about what happened. This was about getting this place back up. And these guys, we owe a lot of gratitude to these fellas.
Thank you. So get to the cause of the fire, or, you know, my opinion, what the cause of the fire is. And there's a lot of speculation. You know, who knows? I could be incorrect, but you know, every leaf I looked under, you know, then that appeared to be the right answer. That first there was a leak in the air system, so you got about say 200 pounds pressure on an air system. That air system is used to start the engines. They have air motors that start the engines, and it's also used to engage the clutches. And so, you know, the clutches, there's a bladder there that controls those discs, very similar to a disc brake, for those of you to get that. And as you put pressure on that line and that bladder, then the clutches close on the drive shaft. Now what we have is we have the air pressure that inflates that bladder, has a leak in it. The air compressor, the only thing that we do know for sure is that the air compressor tripped during this event. So there was no replenishment of air pressure. So as this starts leaking down, there was no compressor there to replenish the system. As the pumps are turning, okay, the engine is turning. They don't know that this coupling is coming loose. So the pumps, obviously, they slow down because they're not being engaged as much. The engines continue to turn at the same RPMs, and so you generate this heat on those discs. and there was enough heat generated there to where there was debris around all of these, like there is in most pump stations, and oil and grease or some type of hydrocarbon there, and that the fires started at those couplings. There are other people that have other opinions, and I know one thing is that nobody knows exactly what happened at that date and time. But, one of the possible causes that I've heard is that the pumps were binding slightly, and that, they either had sediment or they had something in the impellers there, and it caused them to bind some, and then that caused the clutches to slip and to start the fire. I'm not, I did look into that, and what I found is that I asked all 4 people who were out there as operators in the pumps, and I asked them, did they hear any cavitation? Did they see any cavitation? And all 4 of them said no, there was no cavitation. They didn't see any cavitation. They didn't see that on the suction side. They didn't see that on the discharge side. So, that kind of tells me that there was plenty of water to pump there. It's just that now they're still saying that caused the impeller to bind. There was something that caused the impeller to bind. But I don't really buy that, because if you have the air pressure, then those clutches are bound. They're bound tight onto that drive shaft, and so if you bind up the pump, the impeller on the pump, then the diesel engine is going to bog down. It's the clutches don't usually slip, and certainly I wouldn't expect that in 5 or 6 of all of them to do the same thing. So, I didn't think that was a viable cause. Air pressure alarm. So the nasty little thing is over to your right in this picture. Sometime, I'll read it. At some time in the past, undocumented, a low pressure alarm was installed on the compressor at Marvin Bro. That's it right there. The alarm, if a low pressure was detected, the alarm would flash some lights and sound a buzzer. Significant thing here, at some time in the past, we don't know when, and there's no indication of when, specifications, there's nothing. There's as I told you, I think it's 374 pages in the operations and maintenance manual from Marvin Bro. There's not one word about this low pressure alarm. There's nothing in there about it. At some time in the past, again undocumented, the alarm was turned off and not used at the station. You can't see the front of this door in the panel, but you can see the wires going to a switch. So they have an on-off switch that's in there's an 8x8 enclosure box. There's a on-off switch there, handwritten actually, on-off with a magic marker, and it was in the off position. So as best as I can understand, what that did is that disconnected the signal to the lights and the buzzer. So this had been not operational for quite some time. I have no idea how long. As a matter of fact, a lot of the people that I talked with had no idea it even existed. So it was not, no matter what, it was not in service at this time. Had the alarm been working, I believe it could have prevented the fires. So if the alarm had been working and people had responded properly to that alarm, then what you'd have had, the event would have been, we had an alarm, I call him the operator, but they call him attendant. The attendant would have seen that, gone to the air compressor, realized that the air compressor had tripped, and/or gone and shut down the pumps because of low air pressure. But it didn't happen because you never had this initiating step of an alarm. So in over 50 years in the petrochemical arena, since the 1970s, I'm sure before everybody here was born, but not CAG, but
Or me,
Why you gotta call out K?
or me.
well, I wasn't about to say that. But, you know, I've been involved in many investigations, and some of them I was a member of the investigating team, and later I was a manager that received the investigations. There's always some question about, you know, what really happened. As I said, unless you have some video showing exactly what happened, you don't really know. But there is a scenario that's more probable than others. So, you know, again, and my instructions on this when I first started these investigations or first served on an investigating team was find the most likely cause, then work on identifying solutions. So, you know, that's what I've done for these last 50 years. That's what I did in this case, which is, you know, there's a possibility that something else caused these fires. I think the probability is more that we know what it was. But the solutions are the same no matter what, because we've got to have more points to monitor. We've got to have more documentation. We can't have instrumentation out there that is not documented. You can't allow that. So path forward, or my recommendations, is obviously, as we all have talked about, is to engage in an engineering company to look at all three systems. I think that they all should be done by the same contract, because you want the same feel for the operator when they look at a display for Sorrento, or they look at a display for Henderson Bayou, and what they do to start and stop should be very similar when they look at Marvin Bro. So I wouldn't recommend dividing those contracts up. And I would recommend, and I understand what the parish president is saying, but and we have to get more comfortable with those systems, that they are dependable, and we need to figure out if we have one at Sorrento that's not dependable, that has a problem. We need to figure that out, and we need to get people's confidence there. I think it should also, not only should you have the pumps that you know, be able to start and stop them, but they should be able to run on automatic, and you should look at the levels up and down the drainage system, and you should know what's coming and what's rainfall is falling and what's forecast, and so you know how many pumps and when to put that on, and that could be done automatically. So, you know, fuel storage, you know, I think that's 45,000 gallons of diesel sitting right not far from where those fires occurred. That was the thing that scared me the most, quite honestly, is that, you know, that could be a serious fire. I think we need to look very carefully at the isolation of that. You know, when in my experience, you would have these shut-off valves, emergency shut-off valves that would be tripped on under a lot of conditions. You could either do them manually or you do them automatically, but there needs to be something that positively shuts those valves off in any type of emergency. Certifications, sorry, I kind of jumped around with this, but you know, what we found, or what I found, is that personnel, even though for the most part they were qualified, you know, I didn't find any gaps in that, but they were trained I'm going to show you this, and this is how you do it, and then I'm going to show you this, and there was no written documentation of this is how you start pump number 5, or this is how you start pump number 6. It was all mouth to ear. Now, 2 of the young men that I talked with, they said we took notes, and I keep my notes, and I applaud that. However, one of the reasons that you have this printed material that people go by is you want to make sure that everybody receives the same training, and that you hit all the points that you want to hit. My recommendation on certifications, and Chase and Dow, they probably are familiar with that. You have operators, they take tests. They take written tests, but they also take hands-on tests. So I don't know about OxyChem, but I can tell you at Exxon, you, in order to become a B operator or an A operator to move up, you had to go and actually walk around the unit with somebody, and they said, if you have this tank level, for example, gets high, show me what valve you're going to open, show me what valve you're going to close. And so it's a hands-on type thing, and I think that works very well myself. And then you get an actual certification. So most of the time people come in as however you're going to number it, a C or a B or a 3, or, they come in at some place where they can progress once they demonstrate their knowledge. Again, training and documentation. Training should be formal and documented. I think that's something that has to be done, and the operation and maintenance documents should be available at the station. That was one of the questions I asked each one of them, is that if you had a question about how does this operate, or what's the specifications on this, there's no repository there in the control room that has the specifications and the operating SOPs in it. So, that's, again, something that I'm used to, that, the books are sacred in the big refineries and petrochemical. Management of change program, I don't know, guess you guys, I don't know if now you're familiar with that, but management of change, and this is what happened in the alarm switch, is that you had something that was changed, nobody documented it, nobody put it in the operating manual. So management of change is that if you make a significant change in your operations or in your equipment, then there's a process that has to be followed to make sure that change gets incorporated in all those places that it needs to be. And so, you can find probably a lot of information on that if you look around. There should be a clear chain of command. Now, the parish president has his own, he's welcome to run the train station how he wants. I'm used to, I know who I'm reporting to, and if I'm one that's being reported to, I know who reports to me. And, like when I was in the military, that was sacred. You never went around that. You never went past the person that you were reporting to. Again, I don't know the plants of this day and time, but it used to be pretty much like that in the plants too. There were clear points of organization. Operating procedures. Obviously, there needs to be standard operating procedures. So if I'm going to start pump number 4, here are the steps: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and again, that book has to be sacred too, because you can't go in and make changes without updating these books. So people have to be confident that what they're reading in that book is the latest. Checklist, it goes without being said, and Jade, they're working on this now. They've already started this process, but you have to document the checklist. So if I'm going and I'm checking that pump and I check the oil in it, then I make a check on my list, and that I would recommend that be put into a digital file so it's something that's easily searchable and you can find. Manning the stations, this is something that came up from several sources, and my recommendation is that I'm not saying what the guidelines should be, but there needs to be some, I think there needs to be some guidelines, and minimum personnel for pumping at events, etc. I think that more than likely, and I can't tell you when this is going to happen, but we do know this, that there's more rainfall falling. There's still more development going on in Ascension Parish, that soon this operation will probably be 24/7, and so I think we should anticipate that. Fire protection, and James has started this, and Jade has started this in looking at what type of alarms and what type of equipment do we need. James has some recommendations on that. These 300-pound, we used to call them Ansel fire extinguishers, but the 300-pound on wheels, and that there should be. How many did he say for Marvin Bro? Do you remember?
Marvin Bro 5, Sorrento pumping station 1, Henderson Bayou pumping station 1.
Okay. So again, you had these 3 or 4 guys, and they had the handhelds. Some cases 15 pounds, some cases 20 pounds. Is that right, James?
Correct.
Some smaller, maybe even than that. So, a 300-pound fire extinguisher or tank on rollers is what's been recommended. I think that we should involve our insurance company when you get all of this worked out, and they should maybe have some input into whether, maybe if you do this, you can get a better rate, or maybe if you do that, I don't know. He was here tonight, but review of the entire operation. So I think I was telling Chairwoman Casso that I managed, I managed the cleanup of a Superfund hazardous waste site in North Baton Rouge. It's EPA does a 5-year review. Every 5 years they come in and they comprehensively look at what you did, what you accomplished, what the status of that site is. So I think that this is something that probably should be done. Maybe a 3-year, maybe a 5-year, maybe a 3-year the first year and 5 after that. But it should be a comprehensive review of are you in compliance with X, Y, and Z? What did you do? Additionally, it should look at where you are technology-wise. Is there something that's happened in the last 3 years that makes it more efficient or safer for people to work? So it's just a very broad look at all the pump stations. Summary. I talked about this, but I can't say enough about the response that the workers had and about the response that we got from the firefighters. I mean, really, I can't. So, in the lingo when I was in the refining business, this would have been a near miss, and so that means it's I missed it. But what can you do to make an opportunity out of this? And that's what I think we have an opportunity to make that a safer place to work and a safer place and more efficient and probably add to the longevity of the equipment. There you go. I want to thank Darius because he got that. I didn't give all that to him till this afternoon. He got it all up here with only complaining a little bit.
Thank you, Mr. Dawson. I appreciate your report. and all the time that was spent on it. I know that all of these gentlemen may have questions. I certainly want to go over a few things. Not much, but there are a few things I noticed that I'd like to address. In the area, I'll start from the latest one and go backwards. Your review of the entire operation, I think, is seriously important. It's embarrassing to me that I didn't know that the pumping station didn't have adequate fire protection and that the pumping station didn't have lots of things. It's embarrassing. I've been sitting here for 12 years. I apologize to the citizens of Ascension Parish that I didn't know that. And to our employees. So this piece about reporting is the most important piece to me, because future members of this commission should never have to be likewise embarrassed. They should know if there's new technology available and we need to implement it. They should know if there's challenges at that station on operations and maintenance and be prepared to do what it takes to implement it. And any report given by the whoever is contracted to make that review absolutely must also be delivered to this governing authority, no matter who's sitting here. Because I do believe that over the years, had I known, I would have asked questions. I would have been more effective in my role in this seat. As far as I knew, it was all just fine. We paid a lot of money for it. It should have been whatever it was supposed to be. Never occurred to me that it was a 1991 model in 2023 or any time in between. I vaguely remember mentions of, well, at some point we're going to have to modernize, but nobody came to this body, to my recollection, with any recommendation for any kind of modernization. So once again, I apologize. Should have known that. And the people who sit here from after me, they need to know it. If they don't know it, they're remiss. So at least now they know what they need to ask. But definitely, as a result of this incident, there'll be a whole nother set of questions as a result of the next one, unless we do the things that you're encouraging us to do here. So the first thing that's important to me is that review of the entire operation and where that gets reported. It needs to be reported to the parish president or the executive over drainage, and it needs to be reported to the governing authority. In that management of change area, my concern would be you have a change, it's being made. My question is, should it have been made? So who decides that a change should be made? Certainly not an operator without going to some superior of his or hers, and certainly not that manager without going to some superior of his or hers, and hopefully somebody's going to go to the manufacturer or the installers or the engineers and say, we want to change this. What's the unintended consequences of that? Because as we learned in anything you do in this work, there's an unintended consequence of the change you make. So to avoid that, I'd like to see us understand that any change that's made goes through a channel of approvals and is made with the knowledge of all the people that need to be knowledgeable.
So the management of change, it just tracks it, okay? So what you're talking about is, how do you make the change? How do you do the evaluation? Is this, so that's something that you would do as on the operational side. This management of change will track it and keep you from losing the documentation in the process.
Okay. Well, I'd like to see a piece that says the order of approvals for a change. and who needs to be involved in
Well,
that?
normally, I mean, what, again, in my sphere is that there are very clear guidelines of who can approve what. So a department head can approve this type of change. Above a department head can approve this type, so it's usually something that's laddered.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense to me. So I hope that'll be included. I think excuse me.
I'm lost too. Go ahead, Jed.
No, I'd just like to say that we need to remember the importance of our engineering contract for that. That is something that we've already looked at, and I'll use an example with the air compressor. We learned some very valuable information from these mechanics as we was repairing this on how the air pressure relates to this station and how we could use it for the alarm situation. So what we did, instead of making these adjustments on our own, we used our engineering contract, which is with the Dürr Group, and we had that process vetted through Mr. Billy. And then we evaluated what our O&M manual said, and we allow the engineer to make that change, send that change to us, and then that's what updates our O&M manual. I think that's a very good process to use, because
That's what I was looking
the end
for. Thank you.
result is it is vetted by engineering.
Absolutely. That's what I was looking for. I mean, it was shocking to me that we had an alarm out there that nobody knew was there. Some people didn't even know was there. We have no idea how it got there. Obviously, there was a need determined by somebody, and then a decision was made to put an alarm that had horns and lights by somebody, and somebody approved that, and it got done, but then it was forgotten about. So I see how both of your management of change piece and my piece concerned about how did this change get made and who approved that would have been beneficial. Mr. President.
Can I add to that? So, I tried to figure out, okay, here's an alarm. When through the normal progression, and, I asked the team to ask our companies to go through this station every year and suggest upgrades and things like that. But I said, when could this have been caught? When should it have been caught? And in 2013, when we brought on that pump line, and in 2017, we added these 2 new pumps to this air system. At some point in time, that documentation and manual and all of what you're describing should have been there. But this is no unusual circumstance, because in just parish government as general, we have no information hierarchy or information to document. I'm trying to put this together now. When I would ask for things. There's studies that we spent millions of dollars. I have no idea where they're at, because we don't have any record-keeping system other than our grants and finance that were required to keep these documents. But this is no different. In 2017, when that pump was sitting, we added these pumps to this air system. At that point in time, where's the alarms? Where's the checks? Where's all that was built out? These 2 brand new pumps, total on SCADA, and in 2009. I mean, all this whole time. And that question was never asked, never answered. And so, yeah, I totally agree, but no major change happens in that station without coming to this board. No, we don't make changes or add pumps or subtract or do anything that doesn't come to this board. That's public record and it's tracked, but I think you mean more of, in 17, where's that document of change?
Right.
Where was all those suggestions? Where is that document kept, not only at the station, but also in parish government? Where is it secured? Where can I go look it up today? I can't tell you that. I have no idea. I'm still looking for documents. I'm still finding documents in attics over at DPW and trying to scan them and make them part of the historical information that we have spent millions upon millions of dollars for. And it's tough. I have to usually go to the consultants and say, hey, when you did this project 10 years ago, do you have anything left? Can you please send that to us so that we can archive it? So this has been an ongoing thing forever. I look forward to putting something like this in place, because it doesn't, not only does it not exist at our stations, it doesn't exist in parish government, which I'm already working on and have staff working on what that looks like and where we can retain this. So not only the administration can use it, but y'all can as well. When y'all want to research something, when you want to research a project, you know where to go and where to find it. But that didn't exist in 2020 and didn't exist before. And so we're trying to get there. And I don't know where it was, but I can tell you, when you add 2 pumps of that magnitude to that station, somewhere in all of that construction, adding those 2 systems onto that air system, some point in time, the question is, where's our safeguards?
You abandoned the old air system and built a new one.
Yes, and so at that time, when you built this brand-new air system, where was those questions of where's the safety? And I don't know. I can't find the documentation. I have to go back and hunt that down. So there's a ton of missed opportunities, tons, historically.
That makes sense, because preservation of documents is
critical.
I hate to say it's a relatively new area where people recognize the importance of all that preservation. It certainly, I think, is new to us. And so there's going to be a significant task to just catch up, or just to get it done now, versus how do we catch up, 50 years of history. So good luck with all of that.
We're working on it.
I appreciate that you're working on it. So I need to go back now. I've covered my administration, the governing authority, the management of change. Bill, I think you kind of skipped over a little bit in operating procedures. I agree with your assessment that there does need to be clear documentation on the limits for the pump operation. The mechanical limits of the pump's capability should be clear to people who are employed there. And there should be an engineering evaluation done to produce these limits at each station. And if there are other limits, such as regulatory limits, that should also be clear to the attendants.
Yeah, if I overlooked that, I apologize. I didn't, maybe it was, I don't know if it was in the slideshow, but it's in the actual report. And so there needs to be engineering evaluations to tell us this is the minimum that you can pump Severio Canal down to, and this is, this is the how many pumps you have to have running or should have running. So there's a lot of there's a lot here in this operational procedure. Again, I think that's a big picture, and think about yourself if you were there operating what, and you have to decide, are you going to pump this down from 2 feet to 1 foot, or what that's going to be. But I think we need to have, and the parish president has agreed with this, to have a engineering evaluation to tell us what's the effect of pumping it down to extra foot, or and so how long does that take to catch up if you have a rainfall in North Ascension, for example?
I suspect that was done in order for this operation, for this pump station to be permitted and to be operational. But because of the failure to maintain records and documents and operating manuals, it's lost. And so it changes, or maybe it's not. But my question is, how do we get to where that is standard and we know what it should be?
So let me answer this. So weather events are not standard, and so you can't have a standard operation. So if we're preparing for a tropical storm that comes in to anticipate 11 to 20 inches of rain, you can't have the standard procedure that you normally do. So when you have a light rain, you may go to a more conservative level. So we watch the weather. The staff, we have a group text between me, Ron, Jade, and Arthur, and we discuss what's coming. We discuss the models and what they're talking and presenting, and then we will decide based on the severity of what that storm is on how much we should pump down or not pump down at all. What happened on December 30th was you had a rain vent move into the western part and northern part of the parish to where the gauges were hitting 9 foot in Grand Goudin. That's 1 foot from flooding houses. And so you have to then decide, because of that scenario, what do you do then? There's no standard operation to say that at this point, other than to get more aggressive with the pumps to create more head pressure so that it drains and so that you don't flood houses. And so it is so complicated, the weather, especially in 2021, when we saw from flash flooding in Prairieville to a what they called a rain bomb in Spanish Lake, and those things happen, and those are not standard operations. You can't create that operation because it is so varied from hardly anything to the extreme of 20 inches of rain that we had in 2016 in the north that then flooded backwater. And so if you went to 2016 and you say, okay, create a standard operation for 2016, I would love to see what that looks like, because I can tell you that the standard operation that they did, the pumps couldn't keep up. It didn't work. System couldn't work. System was faltered. It overtake it. So write me a standard operation for that.
I'm not suggesting, sir, that there would be. I appreciate your elaboration. But what I'm suggesting is that, as Mr. Dawson's document suggests, that we need to understand what the limits of the pump operation are,
100%.
what the mechanical limits of the pumps are capable of doing, and that the people out there know not only that, but what our regulatory limits are. So
yes,
those
I
are the
agree.
things that, I apologize if I've made it sound like you could have an operating procedure for particular rain events. Certainly you cannot. We don't have a meteorologist on our team. We don't have a hydrologist on our team. We don't have an engineer on our team. So we are lacking a lot of information that might be gleaned if we had that kind of capacity on our team, but we don't. And not having that, we just need what Mr. Dawson recommended as the operating procedures, I think, or in his report here is important.
So the mechanical limits of the pumps are something that we could probably rely on Adura to give us those when they were built. Those systems are in place. And so on December 30th, the last elevation for which the fire started was elevation 2. Normally, we will pump to 1 and then go to 0.05 and then 0 if necessary. Nature has pulled it down to -1. So that we know that nature can pull it down to that level. We don't ever go any more than what nature pulls it down, so that if there's any bulkhead failures or anything else, well, nature has pulled it down this way. We're only pulling it within that parameter. It has been pulled down to -3 before, historically, from what I was told. I don't have that record. And that's what from our discuss with the pump operators is -3, you're starting getting close to cavitation. But we don't ever even try to get close to that number. Not even -1, unless it is dropping 11 inches on us and we're maybe at 0 or holding. That would be the only case and only scenario, or 2016 or 1983. That would be the only scenario for which that would occur. But Mr. Billy Blackwell should be able to testify on the mechanical limits of each pump and when cavitation occurs.
Madam Chair, if I could add one thing. In the efforts to find documents and historical documents, we've been deep diving into those areas what the President was alluding to. We did find in 1995, a GSA evaluation of the pumping operations and how they were operating. At 4 years of service at that time, of the pumps being enacted, they looked at the historical data from the original permit and the parameters put within it, and they noticed that those levels were rather high, and they went back to historic data. And this report shows that the elevation of 0 to 0.5 happens approximately every 5.5 days, or approximately 65 times a year, naturally, no pumping, just naturally. And then from 0.6 foot to 1 foot, approximately 95 times a year. And so it even states in there, as such, pump down elevations of 0 feet for the pumping schedule would be consistent with natural fluctuations of the drainage basin. So I think that's very important historical data documented with timestamps of 1995 by an engineering firm. And that's how we have ran the station consistently. You know, each event is different, but it sort of gives you that guideline of where the operation parameters have always been.
Excellent.
And so I think that that's an excellent start to get this data to wherever direction we go as far as a firm vetting it. But I would very much so caution, this was in 1995 that was done. And our development and our basins have changed and our rain events are more intense. I would extremely caution anything less than that as far as protecting the parish. So we definitely have given this to Mr. Dawson, and
We'll go ahead and scan it and send it to the entire board so
Sure.
they can see the
Excellent.
standard operating procedure based on
Excellent.
that written out.
There was no doubt in my mind, it had to have been decided at some point
Yeah, that's
that
right.
this stuff worked, and this was how to do it. And so I appreciate that you all have gotten that, and I look forward to whatever the evaluation results are, as considering all the changes that have happened since 1995.
yes.
And that, I think, was all I had. I did have. Marvin Borough is the most expensive asset Ascension Parish owns. And I did tell you how embarrassed I am that I didn't know what was going on out there. But we need to understand our deficiencies. Things that exist, deficiencies that exist in safety, most importantly, because that is the lives of our employees out there and our contractors out there. We need to understand that. We need to understand what's happening mechanically, and certainly we need to understand what's happening operationally. So I thank you for the opportunity to hear all of this tonight, and I look forward to my fellow members of the commission's questions. And I, as they would say on in other bodies, I yield. Thank you. Mr. Melanson.
Yeah, thank you, Chairwoman. I'm gonna just make a few comments because in a previous role I held, so training, SOPs, CODs, MOCs were the four things that I was responsible for, and the management of change I think is very important. It takes 6 people at my place of employ to get an MOC approved. You know, you got someone from safety, environmental, you got a couple production people there, and all that stuff. So it's very important. I mean, we can't change a valve from Monell to Inconel without 6 approvals. So the MOC process is very important. Once we create that database, it'll be very easy for us, you know, to track changes we've made and upgrades and things like that. I have a few ideas on the team. Obviously, this would be led by engineering, which most MOCs should be. And then you have someone from the administration side. Maybe we entertain like the chairperson or 1 or 2 board members to sit in on that conversation and also feel good about it. That's things that we can talk about down the road. Training. I've spent some time, you know, training people in industrial environment, and yeah, we have different levels of training. You know, we go through hand drawings, we go through written tests, and all that stuff right there. And I actually think that's a really good. Well, it's twofold. So we're really going to a performance-based, you know, kind of raise system here. You know, that's a good way for people, right, to get their money. Is how efficient are you at running these pumping stations and things like that. So SOPs and CODs. So this, in my opinion, was the biggest glaring hole that we had in our process, and we've had for 32 years now, is SOPs and CODs. We should have a consequence of deviation for almost every pressure and flow on the pumps, your oil pressure, all that stuff, your air compressor, right? There should be a shutoff switch. Whenever that air compressor hits 150 pounds, kills every pump immediately. Whenever any fire alarm goes off, we have some flame arresters in line and some SSVs to isolate, you know, all that diesel fuel. I mean, as far as safety goes, that is, I think, is our biggest our biggest safety risk right there.
Yep.
One fire in any one of those pumps, and it's boom, it's going to follow the common fuel line to these gravity-fed tanks. So I just want to throw that out there. And this is something that I can really help y'all with as far as templates and kind of an idea, right? Like a SOP, you can have a category on emergency shutdown, normal shutdown, things like that, because that's it all comes with different scenarios. So so it wasn't it was unfortunate that at some point in time we had a safety mechanism in place. It had enough cobwebs on it to who knows how long. It's been bypassed. We also need, speaking of bypass, we have a bypass procedure at work. Whenever you bypass anything that is supposed to shut down that system to protect it from itself, you should have that filled out. You should talk about the hazards. Hey, we're going to bypass this air compressor alarm because we need to repair it. Okay, what's the hazards while it's bypassed? Well, the hazard is we could lose air pressure and we can burn up 3 pumps, right? So what do you do to prevent that? Okay, now I'm going to have someone monitor this air pressure. He's not leaving this gauge until this alarm is repaired. And things like that, so a bypass log on all the safety mechanisms that we put in place. So in the lessons learned, look, this thing has been kind of Cadillacing, since 1991. And we all get a little complacent and whatnot, but we have an excellent opportunity here to improve ourselves, and we need to really, really rely Delcom or Dura, or professionals. We really need y'all to lead us in the right directions with recommendations. We have contracts in place with y'all and whatnot, so we should be able to jump on that fairly quickly. And that's all the comments I'll have. Thank you.
Mr. Lawler.
Yeah, I'm not expecting to say this part of it, but I think one of the things I'm hearing is that we didn't know so much that was going on. And I'm just kind of shocked at the lack of fire safety equipment that's appropriate for the site. I mean, it sounds like that was inadequate, lack of training on just how this actually works. But some of that goes back to our employees, and the message has to get to our employees that talk to us. If they're out there all the time, we're not out there. They need to come talk to us. They need to talk to the administration. The people that are out there have to let us know these things. And it doesn't just go for Marvin Bro. It goes for every pumping station. It goes for every department in the parish, that we need to have our employees understand that y'all have the freedom to come talk to your supervisors. And if you don't want to talk to a supervisor, you're afraid to, you come talk to somebody on the council, you talk to HR, whomever. But we need to know about these things, because I'm just kind of shocked about the situation out there. It sounds like this really could have been a lot worse, which is unfortunate. I've been involved in some of these kind of things before, as far as investigating this kind of stuff. So I had a lot of questions on this. The list of people that were interviewed, I saw your list. We didn't interview anybody from Delcon or Adora. Is that correct?
No, that's correct. And as I said, Mr. Scully, I had his log, but I didn't interview him.
But it was a log from the date of the accident, correct?
Correct.
Do we have any maintenance? Does the parish keep maintenance logs of Marvin Bro Pumping Station?
Ron?
We have all of the task orders from our Dura. I sent it out to the board, that presentation that broke down every task order that they have done. I will say there's an assistant director there. We asked him to compile all of his maintenance records. I think Jake alluded that he's currently assigned to do that and compile all of it, and he's in the process of doing that. We're waiting on his deliverable.
Okay, because that should be a part of this investigation also, all that sort of thing. So do we do any maintenance ourselves, or is it just Adora? Or Adora's not doing it, they're just the engineer. So who's doing the maintenance out there?
Well, you have Delcon.
The format that we have is when we brought this contract in was just for what you're saying. Pre-contracts, you had one mechanic on staff, and that's all you had. And I wouldn't even call that maintenance. I would call that reactive repairs. Okay, then you bring on the maintenance contracts. When you did that, that was the tool for that director that's over that pumping station. They have full authority to issue tasks. Their job is to forward think, identify problems, and get it maintenanced in compliance with the manuals and whatnot. They were in the process of developing and updating these operations and maintenance manuals for each station. The latest received copies were in October, and that was going to be the basis for a baseline. Look, we're establishing true baseline maintenance. You go back to Delcon's history within their contract and what they had to do to get a true baseline established as far as maintenance across that station. The way you establish maintenance is you hit baseline on all your pump alignments and your vibrations across every pump at that station. That hadn't been done. And so that's the first thing that Delcon and Adura Group recommended that we do. Hit a baseline so you can start trending data and showing differences or movement within your components mechanically. It took a long time to get that achieved. A lot of extensive work on their part to get that hit. So yes, there are tools in place for preventative maintenance. As you can see on the list of task orders, it was pretty extensive, the amount of work that was needed out there, and that is still needed. I have Jade assessing this with Delcon since this incident had happened and intervened and interjected him into that process just for that purpose, to make sure what led up to this and what could we have done better and what is a absolute must right now. And so he's right in the middle of that project with the assistance of Adura Group and Delcon. And that's all in conjunction with what Mr. Bill's doing tonight. And so he's purview to all that information of what's currently going on and what's brought us to this point. And so we certainly accept that we need to grow and bring our station to those innovative technologies of today's time. I think we all agree that we want that, but we want to get it right. And so that's sort of my take on the maintenance.
I agree, getting it right. It just concerns me how we don't notice that we have a safety measure that's not working. The box is just open, and it could have been 6 months.
I don't disagree with you on that, Mr. Lawler.
I know you don't. It's just, I'm
honestly,
like, wow. But that's where I want our employees to be. I want them to have the ability and to have the faith in us so they can come to us and say, man, this thing has been shut down 6 months, a year, 2 years, we don't know.
It's been repaired, and it should have been repaired just like it has been tasked out and repaired.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, that's
just
good.
Leave it at that.
Were you able to, if you wanted to, or let me ask you this, did you ask to interview people from Delcon or Adura?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
Yeah, that was pretty time-consuming task, so I spent about 5 hours one day interviewing, and then I spent another 4 or 5 hours summarizing those interviews.
Your time is of no concern to me, Mr. Dawson.
I know, but it is to me.
I know it is. But what I'm getting, though, is this is too important of a situation to pass that up.
Well, I had
think
the
we'll
log.
have to do that later.
And I did have the log, and I looked at the log, and after I looked at this log from what they did, I didn't think that it, an interview would shed that much more information on it. But the log is pretty comprehensive. I wish his handwriting was a little better, but.
And I'd like to comment real briefly on that. I believe this is an update. This is not the complete. We still have a lot of digging into recommendations, working with Adura and Delcon to go through the specifics. I don't believe this. I believe this to be an update and further updates to follow. I don't believe this is to be complete, in my opinion.
I agree.
Appreciate that.
Good. Thank you. And then I emailed you some of these questions already, so I can get answers from them later. But as far as the pumping down, this is maybe a question for Ron. We get a benefit, you've said, from pumping down. What is that benefit, and how quickly is that benefit that's realized, how quickly does it evaporate when the rainfall?
That's a tough question. I mean, every event's different. I think your response and rate of return on capacity is elevated per event. So it's a really hard question to answer. But I would say that capacity is definitely a reason for the pumping in any event. Some cases you can predict it. That day, for example, was, I think, 1 to 2 inches of rain was the forecast. Well, we wound up getting 4 or 5 in 2 hours. So every inch of capacity in those types of events could help in any scenario on the top end of the system. So I would say it's crucial that you get these elevations and capacities available. Because remember, we're dealing with a system today that was 20 years ago, the operations that we're doing right now. It might be that you get an evaluation, they may say, guys, you got to look how you're doing things. It might be a different way to do it. And I don't disagree with an evaluation of that, but I would extremely recommend we don't go anything less than what we're currently doing.
When did we start doing pump downs before rain falls?
Go ahead.
I initiated pump downs, I'm going to be completely honest.
Okay.
I thought it should have been done way before then. I thought we flooded a lot of people and not doing it in the past.
When was that?
Was that?
When was that?
When was what?
Did we flood a lot of people for not
No,
doing pump downs in the
2014,
past?
2012. My family's home flooded in 2016, 2014, 2012. I can tell you that pumping down creates capacity not only from the weirs to the pumps, but also beyond. When we added the gate valves, we were able to pull down the Grand Goudin that goes all the way into South Prairieville to levels. Until we have regional detention, the only capacity we have is in our channels. The only capacity. Every capacity you create within those channels gives water a place to go instead of in people's homes. And so creating this capacity is crucial, not only on the inside, but on the outside as well, because it's a tougher discussion for other parishes to say that their pumping is affecting us when we can create capacity within our system, hold the water, and we're pumping the water outside of the system. Therefore, when the rain event happens outside of the system and you have backwater coming down the Amite River, that our pump water is already in the swamps and in our low-lying areas and have dissipated. Instead of, when that water starts coming down the Amite River, we're pumping at the same time, trying to catch up, and we're exacerbating the situation on elevations of water outside our levee system. So it has a two-pronged event. Number one, we're creating capacity within our channels, which is the only place for capacity today, and we're pumping water prior to the outside event. Therefore, that water dissipates and seeks its lowest elevation, causing less impact. If there is any impact, it's minimal, by the way, on any other parishes due to the fact that, it's difficult to raise Lake Maurepas elevation by the levels of pumping that we do. Nonetheless, it does help. And so any capacity that you can create within our system, and we do the same in Sorrento. So you take Sorrento's pump station in this reservoir, we keep that at -2 because that allows that low-lying area of Sorrento to go into that retention. If you didn't do that, you'd have flooding in Sorrento. And so we've learned that from all of these pump stations and all of these procedures, how important that creating that capacity is. And you can look at Sorrento as the perfect example on why it should be done, because we do it there religiously, and if we didn't, it would flood homes in Sorrento.
I have one more comment to that, going back to the reference of the 1995 engineered overview. There's a clause in there that says advance of storm. I'm going to read it to you guys, and we'll get this out to Bill and everybody.
Was this part of Bill's research?
No, he just received this today. So.
No, I've been looking at every file I could find, okay? But in this, it says, when the parish receives notice of a storm anticipated with an expected 1 inch or more of rainfall and the outside tide elevation of 2 foot or greater, the gates may be shut and the basin pumped down to an elevation no lower than 0. The number of sequence of pumps operation will be monitored to minimize the rapid drawdown and bank erosion while ensuring the pump sump elevation timely manner provides sufficient storage and anticipated flows. So I think that was a thought or a process or a method way back then. But again, that was in 1995 they were doing that. So the drawdown and the benefit then is probably not the same as it is today.
But I like how they had some standards. I mean, as I read it, it didn't look like we did this based on a standard. It was just based on a feeling.
It's based on the rain event that you occurred.
Every event, yeah.
Every event's different. There is no standard. It'd be like every rain event, we're getting 2 inches exactly. We know exactly what to do. That's not the case. You have flash flooding and you have to act. You have to respond. If you don't, people will flood.
Ideally, we'd love to be at 0 before rain even comes in Ascension Parish, right? Sometimes you go out and you start the pumping event, just like on this Friday. We're expecting to run 2 or 3 pumps at the most and have good solid flow and keep people's water in the channels. And then you get 4 inches in 2 hours. And so what do you do in response to that? And you start seeing the water elevation at the station coming up. And you saw it after the pumps go down. If you look at those graphs, it rapidly rose to 2.5 foot really quickly. So you know the water's coming there. So it's just event per event is different. I would say that we do everything we can to be as protective as we can on the front end of these events.
I understand that, but I also understand that we have to have some sort of procedures in place. I think the Corps of Engineers would tell us that we have to have some sort of procedures in place. In fact, they probably set forth some procedures when they approved this. And that's something I think, Mr. Dawson, you should look at also, is are we following those core procedures, or are we running afoul of the Corps? That's something that we have to look at, as we look into this even more. I understand there was an issue with the video, that we used to save video for 90 days, and within the past year or two, we're only saving it for 6.5 days. Is that going to be rectified?
Well, I know that's true, that they were doing on a motion type basis before, so you could store a lot more minutes. I've forgotten the numbers now. And I see Brandon's not here, so.
I was told.
Do you know, Jarius?
I do not know, but we can certainly get him the question and get back.
But I was told it was about 6.5 days by the guy.
6.5 days, and that turned into 3 hours or something.
Well, that's my question.
Whereas what we had today was 11:15 to 2:15, so it was 3 hours.
Okay.
I don't know if that was the max or not, though.
Well, Mr. Blanc, I'm assuming, are you the video security guy? Who requested the videos?
I'm sorry?
Who requested the videos?
I don't know. Brandon preserved them. I'm not sure. I had asked him, but he had already done it by the time I asked him.
Somebody had to have asked him.
Yeah,
and why
I don't
only
know
3 hours?
Yeah, I don't know, but he preserved it,
Okay.
and then came back, and we a few days later made sure that it wouldn't to put it in some places where it wouldn't get replaced.
My concern, this also has to be taken up as part of more of a safety operation, security thing, is that we have a procedure in place to preserve video for liability purposes. I'm sure this is hopefully looked at from the insurance standpoint. We may be able to have some of this covered. But it sounds like we had no procedure in place that when an incident of this magnitude to immediately preserve videos. And that's something that really has to be done. That should be part of every security protocol. We've got to make sure our crews are trained for fires. It doesn't sound like they were. From what I read, and I know it's a scary situation for them, but I don't see where 911 was ever called.
Well, 911 wasn't called. James can report on that because Mr. Shakespeare called James directly.
But Mr. Schexnayder wasn't on scene.
He was on scene, at 11 something.
Not initially though. He was called there after the fire.
He was there during the fire.
Yeah, well, I mean,
and
after
he's
it started.
He's the one that called Mr. LeBlanc.
But it would seem to me that when the fire was recognized at about 11:35, we should have had a call to 911 right away. It's just a learning experience.
Yeah. No, that didn't happen. That didn't happen.
Yeah.
Everybody agrees with you there.
Yeah.
There's no question that everybody agrees with you there. Let me just say this.
And James, I would like you to tell them what I told you the day of the event, right after we controlled the fire.
So let me just say this. You are totally correct that we didn't have any fire protection, no training on fire protection. I'm a 37-year fire chief in Ascension Parish. I bleed fire, so I agree with you 100% there. Keep in mind that I was at my office the day that this took place, and I talked to Mr. Arthur Shakespeare personally. He felt by calling me personally, he knew that I had my fire department radio, and he felt that when he called me personally, that I would get the fire department to Marvinboro quicker than the dispatch center.
I agree. You're 911.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
My point is there was a half an hour before that. It's just a training thing. And part of what
you point well taken. Point well taken that we all agree that 911 should have been called before James LeBlanc. But I want you to also understand that 21 minutes from the time James LeBlanc was called to the time we were on scene, water was flowing. So whether it got to 911 quicker or whether it got to James LeBlanc quicker, however it got there, we got there in a timely manner to do what we need to do. But point well taken that we should have A, called 911 first, B, we should have fire training, and whenever we were fighting the fire, the day of the fire, the parish president looked at me and he said, I want all these guys trained in fire protection ASAP, and that's what we're doing. We have been at the Marvin Bro pumping station since December 30th, every day, making sure that we have. I can assure you of this: when I'm gone and you gone, that fire protection is going to be number one when it comes to Marvin Bro, Henderson Bayou, and Sorrento pumping station. I can assure you of that. My 37-year career in Ascension Parish fighting fire, that's all I've ever done. That's the only thing I know. I can assure you that's going to be done.
Okay. And that's excellent. Because what I'm realizing from hearing a lot of the testimony so far, I say testimony, it's like a deposition or something, is that we had a lot of human factors in this. And I think we have a lot of human training that has to go on for everybody involved. It could have been so much worse. Thank God it wasn't, because that would have been, unpleasant. So we have, let's see, where was it? As far as staffing goes, I just looked on the website, and it says that we have 1 supervisor, 1 pump tenant, 2 operators, 1 mechanic as a crew. When did that change? Because we don't have nearly that now. We had 2 people there.
Well, that was the event, I guess. For the event, they still have the people that work within the system. Matter of fact, 2 more came out, so you ended up with 2 and 2, 4 plus 1. We ended up with 5 there when the.
Well, that was for a fire.
Well, but the other 2 were called out before the fire. They were called out for the rain event, to handle the water in the rain event.
We did have an issue at Sorrento with the SCADA. And that was the point from a previous comment. We had to send crews over there because we had to shut down the SCADA and operate the station manually. So we did shifts. There was some shifting. It just happened to happen at the time of shifting people around to address other concerns at other stations.
Well, I think we need to look at our historical manning of these pumps versus what we have now, and make sure that we're doing things as we did historically. And we didn't have I'm not aware of having a fire at Marvin Bro before this.
No,
No.
you did.
So
I will
I
say
think,
this,
I think we need to look at staffing and make sure we're properly staffed.
I think maybe your comment you first started was like the primary staff dedicated to the station, right? That structure is a director, 2 pump tenants, and a mechanic. Okay, that's the people that are there all the time. But the 2 pump tenants rotate a 7-day schedule, so they're not there at the same time all the time. So they don't have enough staff by themselves to man the station. So what happens is you reinforce that with operations people that run equipment and dig the ditches and that sort of thing. You reinforce their crews with those people. So that's sort of what Bill's alluding to, was your 2 primaries were your pump tenant and your mechanic that were there that morning.
What kind of experience did they have?
What's that?
What kind of experience do they have in the parish? How long have they been with us?
Those 2 guys were relatively new.
About 4 months?
The newest pump tenant was a newer employee, 4 to 5 months. He came from industry. He was a plant operator. So he had experience in that sort of control room type atmosphere. The mechanic, pretty inclined guy. But the other 2 guys that were called out, one's 15-year employee and the other,
like
I don't have it
17
right off.
or something like that, 17
And so,
15.
yeah, that was the crew that was out there that day.
I just think we may want to look at mixing experienced personnel with less experienced personnel, because it sounds like there's a lot to learn out there.
So I
This is
have
something to
that
look
as
at
a
in the
bullet
future.
point.
Yep.
Aaron, it's manning at the stations, and I say there should be some guidelines on manning of the pump stations for a pumping event.
Yeah, no, I'm looking on the website, and it's got, Marvin Bro is on right now, by the way, if you look at the Ascension Parish website, so we may want to check that. It says staffing is a crew of 1 supervisor, 1 pump tenant, 2 operators, 1 mechanic / millwright, 1 day shift and 1 night shift. That to me says that's what we have there when it's running. And this time, we didn't have enough crew. Now, from my conversations with employees, that's been a concern, that there's not enough crew there. So it's something we really hope we look into that, into the operations of it, to make sure we're properly staffed. Did the air system suffer any damage?
The air system?
The air compressors and all that?
No, the air compressors didn't. Probably those airlines that run along the pump side, I didn't check them, but the compressor, there are two compressors there. There's a diesel compressor and an electric.
Okay. Let's make sure. Okay, let's see. I'm trying to go quickly. Terry covered a lot of that. Do we have a process when we restart things up like this? Like for a startup procedure when it's restarted to make sure everything's working?
I'm not sure about the restart part of that, but every time you start, there's the procedure, and it's pretty much the same, which is you got to get the oil up to temperature, you got to get check your cooling jackets, and all of these things are, whether you just turned it off or whether it's been off for days, then that same procedure should apply.
Let's see. So I guess do we know who's on site the 48 hours before? Do we have non-parish employees there?
48 hours before?
Or a week before, whenever? Or?
I didn't look into that at all. I don't know who worked the previous
In fact,
week
when were these pumps run? I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's the end of it.
That's fine. When were these pumps run before this? Do you know the last time they were run?
No, I don't.
And the reason, I think it'd be interesting to find out, to talk to the people that ran them that time, to find out if there were any indication that this was coming up, that this was happening, learn a little bit something about that.
Yeah.
Maybe something we can look into more. As far as insurance, are we making a claim for this?
I don't know who can answer that. Ron or Clint, can you?
Yeah, I know that James had went out with them on the site with the insurance broker shortly thereafter, and all of this data is going to be turned over to them.
Okay, good, because that'll hopefully save us some money. Well, you kind of answered something about the documentation of the low-pressure alarm system, but you said something about there's no documentation when it was installed, but we didn't. Do we know that we went through everything? We're probably still looking for the documentation on that.
Well, Ron has been doing some document searches, but to me, the telling tale was that it wasn't in that operating manual. It wasn't in the operating and maintenance manual. It was not a mention of it.
Okay. And as far as I know, we talked a little bit before about the water level. How do we monitor the water level right there, like when somebody's operating those pumps?
Yep.
How do they know when the water level's gotten too low?
They have USGS gauge sites brought up on their dashboards at the computer screens. They have the computer screens that show all the camera views.
Okay.
That's pretty well every 15 minutes they update.
So what level are they instructed that they have to turn off the pumps because it could create an issue?
We just tell them according to what Clint told you. It's per event that we come in. Sometimes we'll just go to a 1. Sometimes we'll go to a 0.5. Sometimes we go to 0. That particular day, we staged it starting at 1.
But there's got to be a point where we draw it down too low and it's dangerous.
Yeah, -3.
Is that written? Do the employees know that? Is that written somewhere?
We don't ever go that level.
That's not my question, though.
I just told you that Billy was here. We could talk about the mechanical. I had the full conversation with Terry's question. I don't know if you caught it or not.
No, I listened to everything. But my question, it's not written. There's no written instructions for employees, and that would make it easier for them when they're working in there to know exactly what they should and shouldn't do. Because right now, without some firm guidelines for them, if they do something wrong, it could be on them. And that's it's really not fair to our employees. It makes it much easier on them.
I would
Employee
say,
do something that he's not supposed to do, he gets fired. That's what happens. So
Excuse me?
they have parameters. They know the parameters. They follow our instruction. If they
Yeah.
don't, they get fired. That's what happens.
I would say that they are aware of the elevations, Aaron, of the 0.5 to 0. That is common language between all of them. They have a document there that pretty well summarizes what I just told you guys. And it keeps them within those parameters, of those levels.
Okay, what about a chain of command? How soon are we going to get a chain of command? 'Cause, I mean, you say if they don't listen to y'all, they'll get fired, but if they don't know who to listen to, that makes it much more difficult on them.
They know who to listen to. That's not a question. They know who to listen to.
Well, who do they listen to?
Listen, it's called an org chart. It has the people that are on it. It starts with me, it goes down to Ron, and then Jade, and then Arthur, and then down to the pump attendants.
Okay.
Okay.
Bill, did you interview the president in this?
No.
I guess not?
No.
Okay, well, he's in charge.
Yeah.
You know, look, I'll look, I have more questions that I submitted. Because I think there are a lot of issues. You know, one of the things I kind of heard, we don't seem to have a real succession plan either. We don't know how things work. It's just by word of mouth. And if somebody leaves, they're gone, and we don't know, you know, we don't know if the next person knows what to do. And that's a scary thing. We got to put that into place. People don't just leave because they get better jobs. I mean, people leave for all kind of reasons. They get old and pass away like me or something like that. That could happen. But I'm just saying we have to be prepared for that.
Well, I think documentation will help that.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I mean, I think that's, you know, this is all a process. We're going to be moving forward on this kind of stuff. You know, I'd really like to see us get an independent review of this, not from somebody within the parish, but I'd like to see somebody come in, look at this incident, also look at our procedures and our operations and all of that, and everything Chairwoman Cazzo said. But when I say independent, I mean somebody that is not doing work with the parish right now and hasn't been asking us for contracts, meaning that we can go to Houston or to Jackson or somewhere and find somebody that's not looking to get business from us, that's going to give us an honest assessment, and somebody that's not looking or that doesn't have a contract with us, because if they have a contract with us, the threat is that we're going to pull that if we don't hear what we like. So we want to make sure we get somebody independent. So I really think we should head in that direction to give them that full authority, because I think you did a good job, Bill, but there are a lot of holes here, just in the investigation point. I know time was an issue, but if we get somebody that doesn't have time as an issue, I think that would be very important. So, yeah, I'll leave it at that right now, maybe later on tonight.
Caution you on that, Aaron, and I'm not opposed to any of that. But we need to make sure and vet what we got in place right now moving forward, that we don't spend money on things at Marvin Bro to mitigate some of the things that have occurred. There's a lot of task orders out there, so the sooner the better. Just let us know when it is. But I really think we need to make sure that Mr. Billy with the Durr Group and Del Con, those task orders, just need to make sure that we don't pause anything that's needed, but, you know, get.
I'm certainly not saying pause anything. What I'm saying is we still don't know how this happened. And,
Sure.
I mean, Bill said it, we don't know. And what I'm learning is there are a lot of holes in the investigation just due to time, and, I mean, Bill's not the utilities director.
I'm just saying the mechanical piece, we still got to protect the parish is all I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I agree,
Task
but
orders, we need to look at that.
we can't
pretty
forget, he is
quickly.
now the utilities director. He doesn't have time for this.
Bill, that's days without pay, buddy. Did a piss poor job, partner.
I mean, I feel bad for the poor guy. So that's what I'd like to see, is get an independent review of this, but also look at all our procedures and get somebody that's qualified to really help us out with some eyes that are really new, because that would really open things up, I think, because when you've seen something so many times, you forget that, hey, there's a box with an alarm on it. You just walk past it. And I'm sure, you know, I've been the same way. You just walk past a problem so many times, you forget about it, and it's human nature. So if we bring somebody in that hasn't ever seen this stuff, they're probably going to see some things that we still haven't seen. So I'll do something about that later on tonight, but I'll let next person go.
Thank you, Mr. Law. Appreciate your questions. Dow Wagsback.
Am I last?
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna be really fast. Don't answer any of my questions. I'm just gonna throw this out there, just listening, and y'all have definitely covered everything that I wanted to ask. So, to me, I I'd like to see us get an update prior, Clint said it, Bill, this is an update, this is an initial study. We're going to keep going on this. We've identified things that are certainly important here. So I just identified the things I think are important. I was going to make one comment on safety. You've already talked about it, the training. Although I think it's admirable that they walked in and they tried to use buckets and whatever they could find, I'd certainly like to see a procedure where we don't send somebody into a dangerous situation. I'd much rather lose a pump than lose a life. So, in the plant, we're not going to, people will jump in a tank because they see somebody passed out, and then we got 2 passed out people. And, I want to make sure we address that. 2, what I see is protect equipment. Anything we can, like Chase said, anything we can identify that low pressure alarms, low oil alarms, we got to get through that right now and make sure. Clint said it last meeting, equipment's old, losing parts for it. I mean, to me, that's number 2. I know we talked about SOPs and training. I just identified those 3 things. I mean, I'd like to see us, we don't have to spend the whole meeting up here. If we could get an update a week before the meeting on those 3 items and what the plan is moving forward to improve them, where we're at in that plan, I think that's just a request. Obviously, I can't demand anything, but I think that would be something good in front of these meetings, not when we get here, because we just makes the night so long. Have those updates in front so we can ask questions about where we're at when we get here. That's about all I have. The only thing I was going to say, we talked about capacity and pump down. Again, I don't want anybody to answer my question, but with HNTB mapping the parish and we have all the major channels, there's got to be a calculation to be done. I get it that the rain events are different, but we've got to find some way to kind of make an educated guess on how much rain has fell and how many hours and when it's going to hit the station. We're talking about putting in rain gauges, monitoring. We should be getting to these tools to be able to have operating procedures around this drainage system, not just a pumping station, but kind of like the gate valves when we put them in between, remind me, Ron, the ones on the corner of you, between Goodine and, yeah, like having a procedure that says when we open and close those. I think that's important moving forward. Again, we're not all going to be here moving forward. So, again, you don't have to answer him. That was just my comments on things I think are important to identify moving forward. We can belabor the fact what happened, who did what 20 years ago, 3 years ago. It does matter. We need to figure out how to improve all this moving forward and have it updated every meeting. So that's my comments.
Mr. Lawler, are you asking to speak again?
Yeah, just be real brief.
Thank you, sir.
Because this is not an action item tonight. It's just a report. But so what I'd like to do is just ask that we put it on the next agenda, but hopefully start working on it before then, that we go out and get somebody to do an independent review of not just the situation, but all of our operations and everything else. That way Bill can go back to his day job as utilities director, and we can get a better grasp of this. And I think we can start working on that. As long as we get somebody, very independent, I think that'd be a really good thing for us. So I'm just asking we put that on the next agenda.
Thank you, sir. I will mention that in Bill's defense, it was my request that he do this. I'm aware of Bill's background in industry. I trust him. I felt confident that the members of this commission trusted him. I also shortened the time frame he had to do this because we were talking about doing it next month, and that would have perhaps answered a lot more of your questions. But man, authority went straight to my head, and I asked them to please do it tonight, because for me, the important thing is to see corrective actions on our agenda. And the longer it takes to get to corrective action, the more risk we have. And so I wanted Bill to report as best he could tonight, and then by the March meeting, we should see items on this agenda that address the issues and begin to correct them. I didn't want to wait till next month and then it'd be April before we began corrections. So while I appreciate your desire for an independent investigation, I can tell you that I would support that if it's available, but I do not want to slow down one bit on making the corrections that we need to make to ensure that we have adequate operations manuals and safety is a priority. It sounds like all of those things are being done. So we can talk about how long it takes to go through an RFP and an RFQ process to determine who's independent enough to do another investigation. And I still think that at the end of the day, we're going to find out the same answers, that there really isn't any way to know exactly what happened. I work in an area that's human services related. Things go wrong, and no doubt we look back afterwards, as we have done in this incident, and do after-action look and say, what went wrong? And by the end of the day, we can't figure that out. It was a lot of things. It was a compilation of problems that resulted in what could have been but was not, thank God, a catastrophic failure at our pumping station. So we can discuss all that later. Are there any other comments, any questions that anybody has? If there's anybody wants to say anything else, speak now or forever hold your peace to the next minute.
Motion to adjourn. It'd be my
Thank you very much. Motion to adjourn.